So far, so good, but there's no guarantees. I won't be comfortable until I hit one of my trails off the cabin.
Hooked on freedom, obsessed with survival. Then, heartbreak. Marty Meierotto wasn't just a star of mountain men, he was its beating heart. Fans admired his grit, his love for the wild, and the raw authenticity he brought to every episode. What forced him to walk away from fame? What tragedy struck in the frozen silence of Alaska? And what really happened in that terrifying plane crash? We'll uncover the private struggles, near-death experiences, and painful choices that shaped Marty Meierotto's unforgettable journey. Backed by first-hand reports, viral interviews, and moments the cameras didn't catch. This is the untold story of a man who gave everything to the wild and paid the price. Born for the wild. Marty Meierotto was born in northern Wisconsin, a place where winters are long and survival often depends on skill rather than comfort. His upbringing was anything but ordinary. Raised by his parents, Thomas and Karen Meierotto, Marty was introduced early to the world of fur trapping, a trade that had run through generations of his family. Alongside his brothers Jeff and Steve, he learned to navigate the cold terrain, track animals, and appreciate the kind of silence only the wilderness offers. For the Meierotto family, this wasn't a hobby. It was a way of life. Even as a boy, Marty showed a hunger for challenge that set him apart. While other kids might have feared wolves, Marty chased them, driven not by recklessness but by curiosity and admiration. He found beauty where others found danger. His fascination with the wild grew stronger with every passing year, reinforced by long days outside and quiet nights spent listening to the sounds of the forest. These formative experiences built a foundation of resilience and independence that would come to define his future. Marty would clearly be headed for high school graduation. Most of his peers had already started preparing for university, career reading, and such. But Marty treads a different path. He shunned classes and headed deeper into the woods to continue trapping as his family had done for generations. With more competition, wildlife dwindled, and trapping became almost impossible in Wisconsin. That moment became a defining choice for Marty, as he then set his sights toward Alaska. I'm going to Alaska. At age 19 in the year 1985, Marty and his brother Jeff loaded everything they had into a car and drove north toward the edge of civilization. There they could be alone, exist in nature, and be full of fur-bearing animals. Something that was originally going to be the trip would turn into a life-altering experience because of the beauty of the state's raw terrain without limits. Cold did not scare him. Desolation did not shatter his spirit. Instead, it gave him life. Marty did whatever odd jobs came his way in the beginning. Janitorial work, logging, construction, anything to keep the dream alive. In every free moment, he spent it perfecting his trapping methods and learning the land. He didn't have much, but he had enough. A tent, a few traps, and a fire in his gut that would not be put out by any storm. Eventually, he would build his first crummy little cabin, simple but strong, and just warm enough to withstand the frostbite of winter. It was no longer an experiment. This is his new home. The wild has taken him, and he has no desire to escape. What others would call unbearable, he has come to accept as necessary. Here in Alaska, he not only found his purpose, but also found peace. His friends back home questioned his choices since they couldn't see how one could live outside the terms of modern conveniences. But it didn't matter to him. Marty cared far less for opinions than for the hunt or the quiet, or just the purity of living very close to the earth. And little did anyone know, although it was about to change his life in a big way, this was just the beginning of his epic journey. But what pushed him from living wild to becoming a face on national television? That decision was more than just survival. It was a calculated risk. From trapper to television star. For years, Marty Meierotto lived in quiet isolation, far from the noise of the modern world. But his dedication to trapping and his unconventional lifestyle didn't go unnoticed forever. Deep in Alaska's unforgiving wilderness, Marty's relentless work ethic and survival skills began to attract attention, not from neighbors or newspapers, but from television producers intrigued by the rawness of his life. It was the History Channel that eventually reached out, seeing in Marty a rare opportunity to showcase a vanishing way of life. They weren't looking for an actor. They were looking for the real deal. And in Marty, they found it. In 2012, Marty made his debut on Mountain Men, a reality series designed to follow individuals living off the grid in some of the harshest environments in North America. Right away, he stood out. His segment wasn't just entertaining, it was mesmerizing. Viewers watched as he piloted his bush plane through snowstorms, set trap lines in -40-degree temperatures, and survived in a one-room cabin with only the bare essentials. His story wasn't manufactured. It was raw, it was brutal, and it was beautiful. The camera didn't change Marty. It simply followed him. But behind the curtains was not the easy switch from full-time trapper to television personality, as Marty had always been disinterested in fame, his lack of glamour, without celebrity aspirations. He agreed to appear on Mountain Men solely because it would provide a much-needed source of income for his family while remaining faithful to his lifestyle. However, right from the start, he made it clear if the cameras interfered with his work or his values, he would walk away. Nevertheless, this is what happened with the show. It became hugely popular, and out came Marty as one of the audience's most adored stars. People found him fascinating not just by his survival techniques, but most importantly, by his authenticity. Unlike other reality stars, Marty was not playing a part. There were no scenes made, and he did not have to react excessively, just like a man doing his thing, camera or not. He never needed drama and gimmicks to keep people on the edge of their seats. Every snowfall, nearly missing bears, and every long snowmobile ride across frozen tundras were all real. His presence gave the show credibility, grounding it in genuine struggle and strength. As the show became more famous, Marty's fandom began to grow. They wrote letters to him, followed him on social media, and planned trips to Alaska just to catch a glimpse of the man. But all that didn't matter to Marty. He continued to trap, build, and fly. He tolerated the cameras as they joined him as tools, not what he sought. Rumors flit by that producers always looked for more drama in the everyday life of the stars, while Marty's words insisted on truth-sticking. It was often quiet, hard at times, but true, regardless of those circumstances. And yet, while the series helped him stabilize and gain notoriety, it also began to weigh down on him. Fame, with all of its perks, came with its own kind of pressure. Expectations increased, schedules tightened, and a blurry line began to emerge between public life and the private self. Marty didn't set out to be a symbol or a brand. He just wanted to live life peacefully. But, as it stood, his time on Mountain Men would frame an era, not just for the series itself, but for those viewers who saw in Marty something that was a rare kind of hero, one who asked for none but gave all. Fame brought fortune, but it also brought pressure. Marty's battles weren't just with nature anymore. risk, fire, and the sky. Long before Marty Meierotto became a familiar face on television, he was already risking his life in another arena, battling some of Alaska's most dangerous wildfires as a smoke jumper. In 1994, he joined the Alaska Fire Service, where he trained to parachute directly into remote and blazing hot zones to stop fires before they spread. It was one of the most perilous jobs in the world, but Marty didn't hesitate. The same grit that helped him survive in the wilderness pushed him to jump out of planes into thick smoke and flames, armed only with gear, instinct, and courage. His fire career began in 1988, when he started as a wildland firefighter. He trained with the China Interagency Hot Shots, a program known for its brutal physical standards. Out of 8 who began the program, only 4 completed it, and Marty was among them. This accomplishment alone would earn most people a lifetime of respect. But for Marty, it was just another step in a life dedicated to hard, dangerous work. By the time he retired from firefighting, he had recorded 337 jumps in response to 114 wildfires, earning him admiration within both wilderness and firefighting circles. Marty's distinction lay not only in his toughness, but also in the profound insight he gained into the Alaskan terrain. Contrary to their view that wilderness was an enemy, for Marty, it was homeward bound. He knew the best places to jump to safety, cut an approved path through the densest parts of the forest, and survive for days alone after the fire was done. He would burn the first weeks in August, taking time away from trapping to fight fires, trading the wintry gales for the fiery rage of an inferno. It wasn't just a living. It was a mode of supporting his family, serving his community, and upholding all he believed about self-reliance and grit. Every part of Marty's life involved his love for flying. Hike there he would not. Whatever for carrying his traps and fire zones, he wanted to fly there. Eventually, he developed into a fine bush pilot, flying a Super Cub across some of Alaska's most inhospitable terrains. The airplane gave him freedom and penetration, letting him check trap lines within hours rather than days, and enabling him to firefight places accessible to very few. The little airplane fitted with tundra tires had become almost an extension of his body, a vital tool in both his trapping and firefighting career. But more than just practical, flying was therapy to Marty. Rather few ever have the opportunity to contemplate life while gliding high above the endless whiteness of the tundra or the golden inferno of a forest fire. Yet flying in Alaska is not easy. Conditions can change in a second, with danger sometimes only a heartbeat away. And Marty knew this, yet never flinched. Some would say he gloried in flirting on the edge of control and chaos, and others would say he put his faith in nothing and nobody but himself, his skills, and his plane. Juggling the demands of being a trapper, firefighter, and pilot added stress that few are capable of taking. Physical demands are agonizing, hauling gear, hiking remote trails, enduring extreme temperatures, and parachuting into disaster zones. And emotional strain, that would come later. Right now, Marty was on the run, flying across frozen rivers, jumping into smoke-choked forests, and laying traps under skies that might turn dark with a moment's notice. Except one flight, in particular, would challenge him like no else. And then came the moment that changed everything. A plane ride that nearly ended in disaster. The plane crash. Rumors have long lingered about a near-fatal flight that Marty Meierotto experienced during one of his solo trips into the Alaskan wilderness. The incident, brought to light in an episode of Mountain Men titled Close Call, showed Marty piloting his small Super Cub aircraft when he suddenly encountered unexpected trouble mid-flight. The footage captured a tense moment. The plane appeared to nosedive, seemingly on the brink of losing control. With calm precision, Marty regained stability and managed to land safely, but not without leaving viewers on edge. It was one of the most harrowing moments ever shown on the series. Some say the incident happened as Marty was flying to check his remote trap lines near the Dronjik River. The area is known for its brutal weather, dangerous terrain, and complete isolation. During the flight, his aircraft reportedly began to behave erratically, dipping forward unexpectedly and threatening to send him into a nosedive. With only seconds to act, Marty made the decision to bring the plane down, aiming for a patch of rough, snowy ground. He landed hard but upright, safe but far from help, and far from prepared for what would come next. Rumors in the outdoor survival community claim that Marty didn't pack for a long stay. He intended to go out to the trap line, check his equipment, and be back before dark. But he ended up marooned at his remote cabin without reliable communication, limited fuel, and fast-dropping temperatures. Some say he had to remain there through much of the winter, existing on canned and dried goods and the meat he could catch over that period. It was a real test of his resourcefulness and the kind of quiet endurance that had always characterized him. The tale goes that without consistent snow, even Marty's snowmobile became unreliable. He would have to stop too many times while riding to dump snow against the heat exchanger to keep from overheating it. In the meantime, his Super Cub remained grounded and unflown until the weather cleared, and either a rescue or repair could be effected. With no backup plan, he relied on the structure of his trapline cabin, the same one he had built years earlier, to get through the season. It was a quiet ordeal, the kind that never makes headlines, but according to fans, this ordeal did shape Marty in ways that might be lasting. At any rate, the show never really talked about what emotional toll the event might have had. Marty, with his cool attitude and refusal to exaggerate, would never have lengthy interviews about the experience, but some say this moment probably haunted him. Following that event, viewers could see him with a more introspective tone. He had become more safety conscious, found the little things more important, like spending precious time bonding with his daughter, and was better attuned to the narrow margin between life and death that existed in the wild. The man who had always flown solo seemed even a little more grounded. The rumor mill has never quite died down about what is called the plane crash. It was, after all, not a crash of the ordinary kind, but a tough emergency landing. But such are the facts of life. And whether the details were ever laid bare or not, one fact will remain. Marty Meierotto faced the elements at their most merciless and walked away from it. Not just his survival skills, but his rock-steady calm under chaos pulled him through that moment, if from the hint of wished-for serenity in his manner, that was hardly commented upon. Thus, it is that this moment exists as one of the most potent reminders of just what it takes to pull through out there, beyond the cameras, in the frozen silence of Alaska. That night in the cabin haunted Marty, but it wasn't the only loss he faced. There was one tragedy that truly broke him. Saying goodbye to a brother in the wild. Among the many dangers of the Alaskan wilderness, Marty Meierotto always seemed to find a way to endure. But in 2017, he faced a loss that no survival skill could prepare him for: the passing of fellow mountain men, cast member and close friend Preston Roberts. Preston wasn't just a familiar face on the show. He was a legendary outdoorsman, a teacher, a mentor, and a deeply compassionate human being. His death from an inoperable tumor on his liver left the mountain men community in shock. For Marty, It was more than the loss of a colleague. It was the loss of a kindred spirit. Preston and Marty didn't always share the screen, but they shared something much deeper. A way of life that valued simplicity, self-reliance, and a deep connection to the land. Both men embodied the core ideals of mountain men, not just as television personalities, but as true representations of what it meant to survive with integrity. When Preston passed away, Marty was one of the first to offer public condolences, penning a heartfelt tribute that praised his friend's generosity and gentle strength. It was a rare emotional moment from a man who normally kept his feelings private. Marty soon joined fans and co-stars in lending their support to the family of Preston. A donation fund had been established to help complete the roof on the house that Preston had been building before his passing. In just 5 weeks, the campaign raised over $110,000. Marty supported this cause by much more than just his money. He offered his voice and support. He spoke openly about the need to honor one's journey by paying tribute to those who shaped it. Alongside that was a weighty silence by which one realized that Preston was to be included among those people. It reminded me that, notwithstanding the hard wilderness isolation, the connections between the likes of Marty and Preston were deep. Rumors about Preston's death came as a shock to Marty ever since that time. There's talk about its impact in bringing him closer to a life away from before. Perhaps it was this that forced him to re-examine the time he spent living up to his legacy. Both men had sacrificed for these lives chosen, one torn down between civilization, violent forces of nature, and the comforts most take for granted. Preston's abrupt departure served as a wake-up call. Time is never safe, even for the strongest among us. Marty had fought a lot of battles, with wolves, wildfires, and the loneliness of the wilderness. But the death of someone very close to him became a scar that not even the wilderness could hide. Over the seasons that passed by after Preston's departure, the audience would catch on to the quirky edge on-screen presence of Marty. He looks to be more thoughtful, not really in himself. While he continues to trap and fly and build, the story says something really has changed. His love of the wild is the same. Perhaps his sense of urgency to enjoy the moments with family looks stronger. And perhaps that was the change that Preston would have wanted for his friend. In many ways, within the moments of the decisions people made, Preston may have lived on in the spirit of Marty. Support for the education of his daughter, spending time away from the camera, and eventually leaving the series, to say the least, were all acts of remembrance of his accomplishments, with every act taking with him the memory of Preston. It wasn't survival anymore, it was meaning. For Marty Meierotto, saying goodbye was not just mourning a friend, but honoring a brother in the wilderness by living every day left with purpose, heart, and gratefulness. It was a wake-up call Marty couldn't ignore, and soon the cameras would stop rolling for good. Walking away from everything. In 2019, fans of mountain men were stunned when Marty Meierotto, one of the show's most beloved and rugged personalities, announced he was stepping away from the series after 8 successful seasons. His departure wasn't loud or dramatic. It was quiet, personal, and deeply rooted in his values. Marty, who had become a symbol of resilience and self-reliance, chose to walk away from fame not because he was tired of the wild, but because he wanted to protect what mattered most to him, his family. It was a move that surprised many, but those who knew him best understood completely. At the center of Marty's decision was his daughter, Noah Jane. She had grown up alongside her father in the wilds of Alaska, helping with the trap lines and learning the same skills that had defined Marty's life. As she entered her teenage years, Marty began to question whether having cameras around was really the best environment for her. He wanted their time together to be free of distractions, and he didn't want her to feel like her experiences were part of a production. For Marty, parenting and privacy were sacred, and they came before ratings. In his last appearance on Mountain Men, Marty spoke with humility and grace as to why he left. He was not bitter. He was not burned out. He simply felt that the show had run its course. "I've had a camera with me for the last 8 years," he said. "I think it's time for me to go back to just being a trapper." The announcement sent shockwaves through the fan base. Many mourned, uncertain how the show could continue without the man who became its emotional center. But Marty's motives were never about fame. He preferred to live authentically. In no time, public sentiments were strong and very poignant. Social media was awash with messages from fans expressing all kinds of appreciation to pity and admiration. Many shared stories about how Marty's appearance on the show motivated viewers to return to nature, or led them to a more uncomplicated way of living, or to just respect the power of silent determination. Some will watch the series only because he is on it. Others have wondered whether the show could in fact continue without the most genuine voice. But then, there was no such validation that Marty sought, because he had already received the best reward, a life lived on his own terms. Whispers started about other possible reasons behind his departure. Some speculated that he might have been getting tired of how the production moved, while others thought the hazards, comprised as taking dangerous flights to endure really harsh winter seasons, might have worn him out. A few went as far as claiming that tragedy, illness, or similar personal issues led him into seclusion even further. None of these were, however, confirmed by Marty. He purely stated that he would like to concentrate on what actually mattered, bringing up his daughter and spending time with his wife Domanque without cameras hovering over their heads. Since leaving the show, Marty has kept his promise. He has been avoiding public appearances, interviews, and media engagements. He still lives in Alaska, in a small community called Two Rivers, with his family, trapping furs, flying planes, and teaching Noah some of the skills that were once passed down to him. His retreat from the public eye was not an ending. It was a return to seclusion, to purpose, to the rhythm of life in the wilderness. And even though fans may miss seeing him on screen, the legacy of Marty Meierotto lives on even without there being any cameras, but rather quiet, snow-covered trails out in the Alaskan backcountry, where he always belonged. But even in solitude, Marty couldn't escape the controversies that followed him. Legacy and life after fame. Since stepping away from the spotlight, Marty Meierotto has chosen to live quietly. But his legacy continues to echo far beyond the remote woods of Alaska. Fans remember him not only for his survival skills and unwavering grit, but also for the honesty he brought to every episode of Mountain Men. Marty never pretended to be anything he wasn't. He wasn't there to entertain. He was there to live. And that authenticity is what made him unforgettable. Even in his absence, his image remains one of strength, simplicity, and an unshakable connection to the natural world. But Marty's legacy hasn't come without controversy. Rumors of tension between Marty and animal rights groups began circulating during his time on the show. Critics claimed that his trapping methods were outdated and unnecessarily cruel, pointing to scenes in the series where he set steel traps for fur-bearing animals. Some advocacy organizations argued that with modern technology and alternatives available, trapping for fur was no longer justifiable. They questioned whether the series glorified practices that caused suffering to wildlife and labeled it as out of touch with today's values. Marty retained composure in his conviction about trapping being a heritage, a balancing act, and a necessary survival task. He pointed out often that for the balance of Alaska's ecosystem, wildlife management must be regulated, and trapping is one of those regulated necessities. Marty insisted with authority that state regulations are observed and only the best measures to minimize suffering are adopted. Pleasure was never enjoyed by the trapper. He trapped out of existence to support his family and in defense of his heritage. Marty led a life of essentially total seclusion after hanging up his boots from the show, as he hasn't been giving any more interviews, making public appearances, and updating fans via social media anymore. He now rather exerts his energy on mentoring his daughter, Noah Jane, who has also shown, apparently, a good deal of interest in flying and trapping. Like her father, she is learning the art of wilderness into skill and independence. The same way that Thomas Meierotto once taught Marty, Marty now leads Noah on as he instills in her the resilience, respect, and resourcefulness that defined his own journey. However, even off-camera, Marty continues to exert influence in the survivalist and outdoor contexts. Even today, the name still rolls off the tongues of many wilderness enthusiasts who owe some of their inspiration to him, and most nice will even say he is responsible for inspiring a new generation of trappers and pilots, as well as homesteaders. An exit by just lowering his profile seemed only to cement Marty's image as a man of integrity, a person who valued action more than words, family before fame, and purpose over popularity. Marty didn't sell a brand. He lived a life and, in so doing, showed others what was possible when comfort was traded for conviction. Marty Meierotto's legacy is intact, even if Mountain Men was in the past. For his fans and devotees, he is more than a former reality star. He is the image of self-reliance, guts, and deep love for the wilderness. While others chase headlines or cling to celebrity status, he quietly returned to the life that defined him. No matter if he ever returns to television or remains hidden away in the snowy forests of Alaska, one thing is undeniable. His story has already made an imprint, and in the silence of the wild, that legacy continues to flourish. In the years following his departure from the limelight, Marty Meierotto's influence has subtly woven itself into the broader cultural fabric of modern wilderness living. His philosophy of self-reliance and honest connection to the land has inspired books, blogs, and outdoor survival forums, where his methods are often cited with reverence. Some outdoor education programs even reference his approach to trap setting and bush piloting as practical models for instruction. While Marty himself may not seek the spotlight, the enduring relevance of his lifestyle speaks volumes. His story has evolved into something larger than one man's journey. It has become a quiet manifesto for those seeking authenticity in a rapidly changing world, reminding others that legacy isn't always built on presence, but on principle. Marty's journey through the Alaskan wilderness was never about fame. It was about freedom. If you were moved by Marty's story, drop a comment below. What part of his journey inspired you the most? And don't forget to like, subscribe, and check out the next video for more real-life stories of survival, sacrifice, and strength.